How many remember the movie Jerry Maguire? All right, what's the most famous line in the movie? Except, remember when Cuba Gooding Jr. was talking to Tom Cruise and he said, "Hey Jerry, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Show me the money, right? I need you to say it louder. Why are we here? Show me the money. Louder. Show me the money. Hands in the air. All right. Let's not forget what entrepreneurship is about. Yes, we want to help people, but we're also going to make some money. And there's no shame in that. And figure a lobbyist would talk like that. So I'm going to try to dispel some rumors about lobbying to some degree, but I want to frame it in the context of influence. How many of you have ever met a lobbyist in the wild before? A federal lobbyist. How many do we think there are? Let's hear some numbers. Thousands. How many thousands do we think there are?
4,000.
10,000.
I heard 4,000, I heard tens of thousands. Hundreds. 100? Over 100,000? They're everywhere, aren't they? And they're corrupting the system.
Yes, they are.
Here are the numbers. Across every aspect of your life: insurance, real estate, healthcare, financial services, AARP, Chamber of Commerce. There are about 12,000 federal lobbyists. In defense, the largest part of the federal budget, $850 billion budget in FY23. How many lobbyists at the federal level do you think there are in defense? We're the same. It can't be the same.
2,000.
2,000. And the others?
Half that number, 6,000.
6,000. And the others? The number is fewer than 1,000. It's in the few hundreds. So a few hundred federal lobbyists participate in the biggest piece of the federal, discretionary federal budget. How many companies are in the industrial base? I'll jump to the answer. It's over 350,000 companies in the defense industrial base. There are nearly a million plus in our overall industrial base.
Yeah.
We don't know the actual number. So if you do some math, fewer than 1/2% of companies participating in the defense industrial base use federal lobbyists. So is it any surprise of acquisition dollars go to 40 companies and their subs? Anybody surprised by that? That's the number. It's crazy how disproportionate this is. And if you do some math, you look at the small business set-asides of 25%, that translates to about 47,000 per year. There are hundreds of thousands in that middle 25% fighting for the opportunity. I want to just talk through some examples of companies that I've worked with and how we approach the federal arena in a specific way, and we're applying influence for a greater outcome. I'm going to show you that it's not about showering cash. It's not about special relationships. I am what I would refer to as a process lobbyist. So I embrace the process, and I take people through the process. We all know it's a complex process at the federal level. It's actually multiple processes: budgeting, legislating, acquisition, and contracting. We all tend to focus on the contract because we think that's where the money is, but that's not where the money is at the beginning. A lot of decisions get made a lot earlier that you could participate in. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of companies of different sizes that are standing up to the big government and having great success. And I'm going to show you how you can have some of that success if you apply a few tools. Austral USA is a ship builder. They build a littoral combat ship. The Navy, 20 years ago, made a decision: we're going to change how we do shipbuilding. We want to get faster ships out there. We're going to do it quickly. We're going to break the mold. They allowed the two industrial partners to start building ships before the design was complete. Any engineers in the room? That's a crazy plan. But it was allowed to happen. Congress allowed it to happen, the Navy allowed it to happen, and industry let it happen. It wasn't long before ships were being delivered that just could not perform. The littoral combat ship was labeled the little crabby ship. Austal USA, who had come to the US to do business because they saw that the Navy was going to buy 52 of these ships, had an existential crisis. They had made a major investment, there were thousands of jobs on the line, and it was going to impact not only industry, but also the Navy. They had to reset the communications of what was being said because Congress was furious. This ship was not delivering, it was expensive, and the promises were not being met. Congress threatened to cancel the program. The Navy was pointing fingers at industry. Industry was pointing fingers at the Navy. By communicating more clearly what the actual facts on the ground were among what I call the three rings of the circus of federal sales, industry, agency, and Congress, Austal USA was able to set correct facts on the table so that everybody understood what was really going on. Congress had bad information, the Navy had incomplete information, industry didn't have great information. They got better at it. Over time, they brought over 1 million man-days out of the cost of building those ships. Today, there are 32 of those ships in the fleet. The Austal variant is deployed in the South China Sea and in the Western Pacific. The company is now building other types of ships. For the Coast Guard, they build submarine components for the Columbia-class submarine, and they were once an aluminum-only steel or shipbuilder. They now build steel as well. They persevered by communicating across the three rings. Beast Code, a small company in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. They do digital visualization tools. They came forward with gaming technology and demonstrated how two-dimensional information could be converted into 3D models. 3D models that could be used for training, they could be used for documentation, for maintenance support. They are transforming how digital twins are used. Beast Code, 8 years ago, had 7 people. Today they have 160 people. It's a company with tens of millions of dollars. They have turned down offers by major primes to be acquired. Axis makes video surveillance technology. Cameras, they're everywhere in the federal government. Axis was incorrectly identified as a company that had Chinese components in their camera. I'm sorry about that. They were incorrectly identified as having Chinese components in their cameras. A couple of years ago, Congress clamped down pretty hard on Chinese components. A company called Huawei is one of a few that they're actually everywhere. They're probably in your home. This was a piece of federal business that was worth nearly $100 million to this company, and they were being unfairly maligned, so that buyers were not buying their equipment because they were on this list. We had to work to put correct information in the hands of decision makers to make sure people knew that they had the wrong list. We had to get that list re-promulgated. It took 1.5 years to do that, but we did that through effective communications. Arnold Magnetic Technologies makes very high-end magnetic systems. They are on our most sophisticated weapon systems. Columbia submarine, F-35, precision-guided munitions. Highly specialized magnets require rare earth material. Rare earth material of certain types is only found in certain places, China being a big one. Congress tried to clamp down and say no more Chinese rare earth material. But they did that without creating an off-ramp so that companies could develop a second source of supply. There are other places to get it, but you have to qualify that supply chain, as some people know. Arnold wound up having to go to OSD, Congress, to get a law written to allow for an exception. We went to the White House to get an executive order to identify that this was a problem worthy of examination that would allow some runway so that there could be an exemption. Even with that, it took naval reactors a little while to acknowledge that the Columbia-class submarine is going to be late in delivery. It's our highest priority defense program. It cannot be late because there are other systems retiring before it. Small company in the big scheme, 3 layers down from the prime in the supply chain, but they were fighting way above their weight to make something big happen, and they did. So something each of these scenarios have in common is that they're all communicating with this constellation of decision makers. And at the federal level, we're always dealing with a constellation of decision makers. It's people and committees of committees across the three rings of the circus: industry, agency, and Congress. But when you can come forward with credible information at the right time and place, you can move people's thinking and apply influence to what looks to be an extremely complex process. It looks very difficult. It's only difficult if you don't participate. As I suggested, the overwhelming majority don't participate. They participate at the part that's closest to them because they think it's what they can affect. How many of you think about your customer constellation in these kind of terms, whether you're selling to federal or to commercial? Do you think through about how you might affect multiple people involved in the decision? I have a mentor who has a saying that sometimes it's difficult to read the ingredients of the jar when you're inside the jar. So sometimes you have to step back and see, am I really approaching this in the right way? Using tools of influence that I'm going to talk about here, I help companies move the needle with upside sales of between 5 million and 500 million in a single year. It's not hyperbole. The effect of this kind of work on the companies that I work with, in the 10 years I've been doing this, it's over $5 billion. $5 billion. You might think that those numbers are just out of range and that they're exaggerated and you could never do that. Well, East Code does it in $2 million increments. Also, USA does it in $250 million increments. But it's the same process. Small, medium, large, it doesn't matter. So what are the tools? They're at your disposal and they're probably sitting in your toolkit, maybe unused. I have what I call an 8-minute rule of messaging. Any meeting in Washington, D.C., get it done in 8 minutes. This is not an elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is meant to introduce you. An 8-minute rule of messaging is meant to influence an outcome across the constellation. The 8-minute rule of messaging has 4 parts. The issue, what's the problem? The background, how did we get here? The discussion, why is my solution the solution? This is where you talk about yourself. Then a recommendation is very specific. You need to put this amount of money on this activity in this budget line to produce this outcome at this point in time. 4 parts: issue, background, discussion, recommendation. If you can do that in 8 minutes, and I coach people on how to do this, so that you go into a 30-minute meeting, you get right to the point, you command your meeting, and then here's the magic part. You give time back. When you give people time back on their calendar, especially in Washington, you're a hero. And guess what? Because you did that, you get to come back many times over because they like dealing with you. It's not going to be a long, drawn-out meeting where we have to go through 55 PowerPoint slides. We do Washington meetings with 1 piece of paper. Those 4 parts I described are known as a congressional white paper, but it works everywhere. And if you can tell your story simply like that, such that you're not putting people to sleep, and they're staying engaged with you, and you know where this is going, you don't let it drift, and you can command that meeting. I've talked a little about mapping, but I haven't said it quite like that. When we talk about industry, agency, and Congress, there are decision makers, decision influencers, decision enablers, and then there are very, very, very few actual deciders. Distinguish who those people are. Think about how you might adjust the message for each of those people, because it's different. And some people, we're going to find out, don't matter. It's not that they're not good people, but they're not relevant to the decision that you're trying to influence. And I'm not talking about bending the horseshoe to try to sell the government something that the government doesn't want. If the government doesn't want it, I don't want to be a part of that either, and I don't support that. We support things that the government wants, but the process won't allow to happen. Also, USA that I mentioned has new medical ships in the budget in FY23. They weren't in the budget because the Navy asked for them. Navy wants them, but they didn't budget for them. They didn't budget for them because they had a good idea that Congress would include them. Well, we had these other two medical ships, very old ships. They cost about $120 million a year to operate. And when COVID hit, what happened with the two medical ships? Everybody remember? They didn't move 100 feet for weeks on East and West Coast. It was perfect timing. Also had something ready to go. They had been talking about it conceptually at trade shows among industry. They had been talking about it in Congress, talking about it with the Navy. Suddenly everybody's interested in it. We all know that the multi-year budget process won't allow you to just insert something, so Congress has to do that. But also was ready, they were participating in the full process, and they made it happen. I said some people don't matter. You need to identify your stakeholders. Doesn't matter if this is federal or commercial. Somebody's got a stake. Somebody's using what you provide, or needs what you provide, or should want what you provide, but they don't know about it yet. When you know who the stakeholders are, you know who they aren't as well. By default, you don't spend time on those people because they're not relevant to your outcomes. You need to understand funding profiles. In the federal level, to not know the funding profile of what you're selling into is malpractice. The documents are public. There's an FY24 budget about to be released. It's going to be released a few days late, about a month late. It should have been delivered in this month. It'll come out March 6th. March 9th, I apologize, March 9th. By March 10th, those documents are public. So you now know what's in it, you know what's coming for 24, you have an idea what's coming for 25. But to not know that is just not right. In the commercial world, they also have budgets. But just like in government, budgets are plans. They can be changed. And it's for you to point out to whoever owns that budget that they might need to reallocate something. They might have come to a wrong decision where they didn't know about you and your stuff that you're trying to sell that could help them. And so you have an ability to influence them to move their decision making or change their decision making. You have to do it at the right level. Just like there's a funding profile, there are public profiles. The people I talked about in the 3 rings, they're all on LinkedIn. Almost everybody's on LinkedIn. Almost everybody. You're probably on LinkedIn, or you're probably somewhere social, website, social media. You're checking out people in those 3 rings, but they're checking you out too before you ever walk in the door. Studies show that 30% of that buying decision is made before you ever have first contact. Think about that. What does your public profile look like? We're at an industry event. Stu is leading this event along with the VDI. When you go to events, are you attending? Are you on your phone? Are you meeting with the same people that you met with at the last 3 events? I see this regularly. People go around the country. I've got to go to this show, got to go to that show, got to be here and there. And they're meeting with the same people all the time. And worse, they're not trying to lead the professional associations of which they're a member. And when you lead an association, you gain access to a whole different layer of people. And you can bestow awards on people, bring in people that you want to get to know, and have them recognized. And everybody has an ego. So there are ways to help other people improve their lives and be seen in a different way in their situation. But if you don't step into the light and command an opportunity like that, if you're just attending events, you're missing an opportunity. The 7 things I just described there have nothing to do with winning at somebody else's expense. They're about you doing your best, using tools that are available to you to achieve outcomes that are helpful to you and to whoever your customer is. But it's not about winning. Yes, you might win a competition if it comes down to you and somebody else, but you're not pushing somebody else aside. You're explaining why your solution is the best. I have a couple of evergreen ideas that I've picked up on along the way that relate to any type of sales situation. And you can have your own list. I've seen these to be true. Recognizing stakeholders, we talked about that in one way, for the good and for the bad. Timing. You have to understand timing of the buying process that you're selling into. It amazes me how many company presidents come to me who have no idea what's happening with the fiscal timeline. So at the federal level, there are 3 budgets in motion at any one time, at least 3, there's actually 4. 3 that you might be able to influence with an intermediate or long-term opportunity. The way you would address it would be different. If you went to Congress right now and asked about FY23, they'd look at you like you didn't know what you were talking about, because you don't. If you're trying to address FY25, and you go to the Pentagon, you might be able to make a real input. If you're trying to influence FY24 in the Pentagon, it can be done, but it's not easy, and you're gonna have to really work hard at it. Because now you're talking about how to get somebody to move money off the line that's already been committed. It can be done. But if you don't understand that timing, and if you come in and ask for something, or tell a story, or make a connection because you met somebody and now you want to meet them in person, you're giving away credibility. At worst, you're wasting their time. Time in the Washington arena is how everything is measured. If you think about how Congress runs, if you ever watch the floor action, I know it's riveting TV on C-SPAN, but it's always against the clock. How many minutes to speak, how many hours we're going to debate something. When we close out an issue, there's a thing called closure. It means there's 30 hours of debate left. It's all based on time. When you can get that in your head, when you respect other people's time, and I know this applies to commercial, you may be giving away credibility that you just aren't recognizing. Overcoming process, another piece of evergreen advice. I'm talking about a highly complex process, but you're all selling to a process. Understand that process and figure out how to overcome it. They can all be achieved. Positioning. What is it that you're solving? How can you solve it? Where are you in that fiscal process, whether it's federal or commercial? If you understand where you fit, when you can deliver, how you can be on time and on cost, you're different than other people. Making minor investments. What I talked about are all easy things to adjust. I've described, I think, some big outcomes that companies of all sizes achieve. I could go on. I've worked with dozens of companies, just in the 10 years I've been doing this alone. As a corporate lobbyist, at the corporate level, we did dozens of programs per year using similar processes. But they're available to you, and you can adapt them to your specific situation. I describe multiple companies, no 2 were exactly alike, but the process on the other side is exactly alike. How many people have lived in base housing? About half. How many took a shower in the last 24 hours? Okay. Well, we all know what grout is. Grout is that stuff between tiles. So we were living in base housing. My wife and I have 4 daughters. They're now adults out of the house. But when you have six in the house, you need your bathrooms. We had a problem with the master bedroom shower. The grout was coming apart. In base housing, you had to wait for a maintenance person to come fix it. I said, I can do this. I go down to the hardware store and get some grout. The guy said, you're going to need a grout float. And I sort of knew what it was. He showed me it's a hard piece of rubber with a handle. And I said, I'm only going to do this once. I don't think I need that. I'll just use a sponge. So I come home and I put the grout down, use a sponge, wipe it clean, turn the shower on the next day, the grout starts coming. Do it again. I went through this twice. By now, the maintenance guy is able to fix it because the calendar has moved. But here's the deal. If I spent $15 on the ground floor, probably could have done it the first time. We'd be done with it. We'd have a happy household. Make those minor investments. think real hard from outside the jar about what you're doing here and how you're approaching it and how thoughtful you're being about your sales process across whatever your customer constellation looks like. I'm happy to take any question. You can ask me anything. That's my keynote.